Well, I was born at a time when, in South Africa, due to the laws of apartheid, my parents weren't allowed to be in any shape or form in contact with one another. I grew up during a time when we were governed by the laws of miscegenation, as they were called. Interracial relationships were forbidden. The mixing of races was forbidden. And so, essentially, being born from my parents, a white Swiss man and a black Xhosa woman from South Africa, I was essentially born a crime. The very existence of me was something that was against the law. What my parents had done was breaking the law, and because of that, our lives were impacted in the way we could live as a family under those laws of apartheid.
Now, you were born in 1984. How did you interact with your black mother and your white father?
Well,
at that time?
Luckily for me, I interacted with them like a child. I was very lucky in that my parents did a great job of shielding me from the realities of what was going on in the country. I only knew the world that I was in, and I was only surrounded by people who were in the same world as I. So, ignorance truly was bliss in that regard. I knew I had a father who was white, but I didn't know that he was a white person. I just knew that he was my father. I knew that I had a mom who was black, but again, her race meant nothing to me because at the time, that was the only way I knew it to be. I thought fathers were white and then uncles were black, and that's how the world worked. So I was truly shielded from the stress of what was happening in the country at the time. It was only as we started transitioning and as I got older, I started realizing, and I was really lucky that I was on the cusp of a country achieving democracy and equality before I became a fully functioning human being.
So when you were young, could you go to the park with your mother and father and play like other kids were playing?
Well, I could. The question, I guess, is were we allowed to? And that was the key thing. We couldn't be seen in public together. My mother broke many laws by living where she lived. And I write about this in the book, she illegally rented an apartment in an area that was considered a white area. And so what she'd do is she would masquerade as our maid, as my maid. And that's how she'd walk around with me. She'd dress in maid's overalls, and that's how we'd get around. She found ways to circumvent the system. She found ways to get around rules that she didn't agree with. And so for me, I still played with my mother, because from the outside, I don't know what it looked like to everyone, but a lot of people just assumed that black woman was the caretaker of this child who was in South Africa considered colored. And my father, on the other hand, he couldn't be with us at all in public. There were times when we were together, but he wouldn't play the role of a father because then that would give the game away. So that was a limitation. But the one story I tell in the book is when I was really young, I used to love running. I still do. But I would go out with my mom and dad, and if we were in public in a park together, the only limitation was that I couldn't get too close to him. I couldn't, be seen as his son. And so I would chase him as any child would their father, but then he would run away to protect us. And then I was like, yeah, the game is on. And so I would chase him, and my mother would be chasing me. And so I, like many other children, have great memories of running in the park with my parents. The only difference is they see it from a slightly different perspective.
Yeah,